What's up, friendos? Welcome in. It's week 11 reactions. It's recaps. I'm Chris Welsh. That is Scott Bogman, Deepak Chona in the house, talking injuries, talking about this absolutely worthless week of football. I don't have a lot in me. This is going to take a lot for me to keep it clean and keep it PC and not be angry. My fuse is about there right now after watching the 49ers lose that. But guess what? Week 11, championships are made, and dreams are crushed. That's kind of where we're at right now. It's crunch time, baby. Trade deadlines are right around the corner. We got all the stuff and things. Bogman, I know you're on cloud nine. It's really super annoying to even see your face right now and see you happy. So I hope you stub your toe.
Yeah, I probably will. 8-2 though. I'll be 8-2 when I stub it, so that's fine. Loving it.
Okay, I'm trying to think of something. I'm trying to think of something to bring you down a notch, but I can't. Deepak, I mean, you're always, bright side. It doesn't matter what's going on. You get Nico back tonight. How we doing, brother?
I'm good, man. It's a stress-free Sunday when the Texans don't play till Monday, so I'm good. Nico's coming back, and we're feeling like we're about to go on a hot streak.
All right, well, we got stuff to break down. Thank you guys for all hanging out with us. Of course, if you're listening on the podcast, check us out over on YouTube, youtube.com/fantasypros. If you're watching on the YouTube live, which you can do every single Sunday night, you can check it also on the podcast if you had to get away or you want to take it with you driving or anything like that. So here's the weirdness. Here's the total weirdness of everything this week. Not really injuries. Like we don't even put a graphic up today. Cross your fingers, because I know we got Sunday Night Football, and I got a bunch of bad juju going out today. I'm like, ooh, Tyreek Hill, I'm gonna be the only guy. I'm tribute. He had 2 touchdowns. Like, I know I'm setting us up for this, but we really did not have any crushing injuries. We were gonna jump into a couple of the injuries that were kind of taking us into this week. We did have one that popped up, but not enough for big graphics. So let's just jump right into it, Deepak. Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney ended up, you can let us know. I believe it was like a hamstring injury. So he was about the only player. We had a couple little scares here and there. Khalil Shakir got hit, was holding his back at the end, but came back in. But Darnell Mooney looks like the only player, as we do this, that is going to come out of week 11 scathed. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, exactly. He was going in actually with what seemed like a mild severity Achilles strain or maybe tendonitis, and then he was ruled out of this game with a hamstring. So the game was out of hand when this happened, so it's hard to know exactly the severity, but the average on these is about 2 weeks. Add in the fact that he had the previous separate injury and could have even maybe predisposed him to this one. So I would say most likely I would think he sits at least a week, but we'll really have to be following his practice report closely.
Boggs, Darnell Mooney out. Ray McLeod saw a little bit of an uptick. Is there beneficiaries besides the obvious? Is this one of those like Mooney misses games, London and Pitts kind of tick up? Ray McLeod kind of sneakily just gets some stuff. What's your expectation right now?
For Kyle Pitts to do anything, that would be real nice, but we'll see. I think obviously Ray is the guy that gets the bump here. Veteran with experience, has looked good when they got shelled by Denver today. That was ugly. But yeah, disappointing to see Mooney go down. I have him in like 3 or 4 spots.
Yeah, we had a, speaking of those Broncos, Bogman and I have a shared DFS. I had a lineup that had Jennings, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Bo Nix in it. And then Bogman sent a lineup, and I was like, I should probably mix some of ours together. And I loved that you had Debo and Pickens in. I'm like, God, I love this. And I had a bet on Russ Wilson. I took those 3 players out to get Russ, Debo, and Pickens in.
Oh no.
Yeah. This is our lesson. One person does it. No combos.
Yep.
I send you the lineup, you do it, or I don't send you a lineup, and it's yours. That's it.
That is true. So no Darnell Mooney, at least we'll have to worry about. So let's talk about the injuries that were kind of going into this week. The biggest one on the Start and Sit show this morning, or the Start and Sit questions that we have. We do a 2-hour live stream Sunday mornings if people don't know or they haven't checked it out before. CeeDee Lamb. Honestly, one of the few things I did get right this weekend was saying Jennings over Cedric Tillman, or a lot of, the big questions, but CeeDee Lamb was one of the biggest questions. So we are still going to be waiting on official word. Deepak, talk to us about your expectation for him this week and moving forward.
Yeah, so CeeDee Lamb, very durable history. He's actually only missed 1 game in the past several years. So you would think from the way that they are saying they're optimistic that he plays, that he's probably out there. Now, he had that shoulder, the AC sprain, that's a little bit of a lingering injury for 2 to 3 weeks. So he's still a little bit in that window. And then you add in this back issue, the whole thing kind of screams of a re-aggravation risk concern going forward. Now, the production hit here, you typically do see with more so with the shoulder sprain than you do see with the back. But the whole situation is kind of confounded by the fact that you went from Dak to Cooper Rush at the same time that he got injured. So CeeDee's a high risk player, but more so I think because of the quarterback he's playing with than because of this injury.
Boggs, CeeDee Lamb, like I said, he just dominated all the questions. And unfortunately, we're at a place where we really, if someone had a choice, like, I don't know, maybe they've got one of the backup, Cowboy wide receivers, or I don't know, maybe they were deciding between Tank and CeeDee Lamb, and there's like a little bit of safety there. What's your
Nico,
take?
Something.
Yeah, well, if that was a question, great. But like, if I'm saying maybe Tank versus a CeeDee Lamb, people are still kind of looming out there with it. What's your take on starting CeeDee Lamb? And I mean, if you had Tank, and CeeDee's a little bit banged up with re-aggravation risk, and he's a little bit dicey, would you just not even worry about it and go Tank? Are you comfortable? Because that seemed to be a big thing on the live stream this morning. Debro and Pisapia were going back and forth. Debro was pretty out on CeeDee Lamb. Tom, myself, and Pisapia just couldn't find a space where we're not going to start CeeDee Lamb if he's active.
That's kind of how I feel as well. You have invested in CeeDee Lamb. If he's out there, I'm playing him almost every single time. I will say that, like, luckily for you on Monday, if you are making one of those decisions where it's between Dell or Lamb or somebody else, like, you know what you need, right? So you know what you need. And if it looks like, hey, it's 5 points, I'm just going to throw in Tank Dell so I don't risk the, blank from CeeDee Lamb if he goes out there and gets hurt real quick or re-aggravates his injury real quick, then fine. But if I'm down 14, I'm not putting Dell in there. I think CeeDee Lamb, you have to go with CeeDee Lamb because he's most likely to score a touchdown. So for me, almost no scenario where I don't roll Lamb.
Yeah, and I can't live in a world where it's like, yeah, sure, the aggravation risk is higher. I don't think I could let that be something that like makes the decision where I'm like, okay, well, if he plays and Cooper Rush is the quarterback, he's 15. But because of the aggravation risk, I'm going to move him outside of the 20. I just can't do that. Like, I have to just hope that he's going to be able to get out there, hope that Cooper Rush can complete like 14, 15 passes, like at best, but you're going to end up starting him and going with that. And hopefully the injury is not going to continue to carry over because it is a very, very serious time. Nico Collins on the other side, Deepak, this is your guy, healthy. Do you think there's any aggravation risk? Just anything you want to take and talk about on the injury for Nico Collins?
Yeah, Nico Collins, I consider at this point plug and play. The data is very favorable for hamstrings when they're 5 weeks out, like he is right now. And he's on the younger side with a higher kind of pre-injury baseline athleticism. Those players tend to do very well. And the data points to about 90% of his pre-injury production, which is, of course, like a wide receiver one without question. Now, the key here is wide receiver hamstrings in general do carry some re-injury risk. And with his profile, it projects around 15% over the next 6 weeks. So not saying that he's high risk, but definitely there is, anytime you see one of these guys come back from a hamstring, those are the ones that get re-aggravated a little more commonly than we want. So you're not out of the woods, but I would say plug and play as long as he's active.
An interesting thing, I don't want to sit on this because we got one last one, but like the guy in the chat, Ronnie, said, am I crazy for wanting to start T. Higgins over Nico Collins due to potential for blowout tomorrow? It's so funny because that's like something that's not even remotely close on top of my mind. Like Nico Collins is a top 10 wide receiver when healthy, and no chance would I think, well, I don't want to start him because of a blowout. Wouldn't want to start him if I was worried about injury. If there's a blowout, Nico Collins is going to be a reason behind that. If they're getting
just like we
out,
saw Jacksonville and Detroit today, right? Everyone in Jacksonville or in Detroit put up points. So.
And if they're behind, Nico Collins is the guy that's going. I'm not sure how much more comfortable I feel about T. Higgins in there. Boggs, I don't think there's anything to cover about Nico Collins. What I do want to talk about is the last one, Isaiah Pacheco. Deepak, I'm sorry, Boggs, I'm skipping you, but I want to come back to your fantasy take for this next week. But Deepak, the word is that Pacheco will be, quote, ready to go next week, but there's a shortened week. So there's a potential that maybe he's still not even active. Your take on the injury, do you think that Isaiah Pacheco can get back to a full workload off of this injury once he returns?
I do think he can. Now, that is probably not going to happen right away. We saw Mark Andrews come back from a very similar injury last year, about 2 months, which is right around where Pacheco is now. and he was extremely limited. And the data points to 20 or higher % efficiency dip, so per touch production. But then also, if you look at the snap count, you're very unlikely to see really a full workload for the first probably month that he's back. So I think looking down the road, it may be very, very end of fantasy season, if at all. But playoffs, in terms of NFL playoffs, is really more likely when I think he's kind of back into form.
And this is what's kind of critical here, Boggs. Today, Kareem Hunt had 14 of the 17 Chiefs carries. They did not run the ball because they were playing from behind. Pacheco comes back. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like they don't bring him back on this shortened week, so you have him kind of like full force into week 13. So the question is are you comfortable with Pacheco starting him in a lineup when he comes back? Or do you think you're going to have to try to wait until week 14 or 15? Or really, I guess the question is, would you start him at the minute he's active? And then are you comfortable thinking he can have a full workload come playoff time?
No, I want to wait, and I'm not really comfortable with Pacheco moving forward. Deepak warned us about this when the injury happened, right? He said, hey, look, he's going to come back before the end of the season, but it's doubtful that he looks all the way back until the playoffs, if even in the playoffs. And that's kind of the same thing that Deepak is reiterating right now. So I have been kind of off of my Pacheco shares. I do have him in one dynasty league where I've stashed him on the IR, so I'm waiting to bring him back, and I need a running back desperately. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to roll him in that first week. Maybe my desperation would do it, but in a normal league, I think I would roll with someone if they are dependable in getting touches over Pacheco.
And it's going to be tough to see, is he going to get to 12, 13 carries? Can he get more? If he doesn't, it's going to be hard to gauge. It might turn into like what James Cook is doing. Like you're going to have to hope for 2 touchdown days. And I think what it's leaning towards, especially the data, like Deepak, last thing, do you think with the shortened week, they're more likely to sit Pacheco this week or try to get him a few carries and be active?
Typically, you don't see people come back on a shortened week. But with that being said, they have been announcing week 12 for a little while now. So they may have been targeting this the whole time. And I'm not sure a few days really makes a difference at that point.
Good stuff. Sport MD analysis. That is where you can find Deepak Chona. Lots of questions about the Twitter doctors out in the world. There is no question here, though, that Deepak is the best. Follow him on Twitter. Don't go anywhere, because when we come back, Bogman and I are breaking down all these games and that really awful, stupid game we'll go through super quick. Deepak, we love you, brother. Stick around. We'll be right back.
The fantasy season is like running a marathon. Checking your lineup, tracking injury news, making trades, Monday night waivers. You've got to show up day in and day out for 17 weeks. So how do you dominate your league without it feeling like a second job? The answer is My Playbook. Syncing your league with My Playbook is totally free, and it makes winning your league easy. You'll get a personal dashboard that has everything you need to know all in one place. News and notes for your players, bye-week alerts, matchup info, it's all there. Our league analyzer gives you power rankings for your league and shows you how the experts rate your team. We even have an AI model that studies injuries and tells you which of your players are going to play this week. And for premium users, there's every possible advantage you can think of. Set the lineup the experts would start with just a single click. Get instant waiver suggestions and trade suggestions anytime. You can even put your lineup on autopilot and have us set it for you. So this season, take your time back and dominate your league like never before. Start for free today with the My Playbook app or at fantasypros.com/myplaybook.
My Playbook, baby, and my teams hurting a little bit. Juwan Jennings is going to have lifted a couple of those. Let's talk about your teams and your players, and let's kick this bad boy off. Mr. Scott Bogman with the Colts and the Jets. The Jets do one thing, and they do one thing great, and that is disappoint. They are just the biggest. It's like, hey, Anthony Richardson, he's the worst quarterback. He hasn't started in weeks. Get him in, Jets. They lost it. That's right. Colts, they took it down 28-27 in New York. Anthony Richardson, 272, 20 for 30. He also had 2 rushing touchdowns. That's like vintage Anthony Richardson.
Never a doubt.
Nope, never a doubt. We never questioned it whatsoever. Thought he was the worst quarterback in the NFL. He got Josh Downs involved, 5 for 84 and a score. Michael Pittman, it was slow, but it did get involved later in the game. He ended up having 8 targets. Jonathan Taylor kind of did his business. I think that's the big main focal point that I'm going to present to you. Boggs, your biggest takeaway, and let's start it with Anthony Richardson. After this performance against the Jets, do you think Anthony Richardson is now a trustworthy, viable fantasy start?
I mean, I wouldn't call him trustworthy, but the upside is still enormous. It always was, and it continues to be. He was great today. I think the best thing about this start for Anthony Richardson was that the targets looked good. Josh Downs looked good. Pittman had 8 targets, right, coming back, and Pittman practiced in full the whole week. So we really like to see that. Mitch had Adonai Mitchell had a big play as well. Everything is filtering through Jonathan Taylor. 63 of 70 snaps. Sermon only had 5. Goodson only had 2. So it's just we saw this Colts offense kind of clicking on all cylinders here, which is nice to see.
Do you think that it is Downs over Pittman? Pittman did end up out targeting. Downs was the touchdown. So you're still comfortable Downs over Pittman, right?
Yeah, it has to be. I don't know that Anthony, and this is why Anthony Richardson isn't all the way trustable. I don't know how much he loves throwing to the outside still, right? We had a big play for Pierce late when they were up. We had, a couple plays for Pittman also late. He was really working the middle of the field more than anything. So, yeah, I'm still a little shaky on Pittman.
Over on the Jets side, I'm not really sure there's much to cover. I mean, Rodgers was efficient, 12 for 22 for 29. He had a couple touchdowns in there. Devontae Adams got most of the work. He was banged up this week. Garrett Wilson didn't get involved, and Breece Hall was just kind of a monster. The 2 scores, he had 16 carries. He ended up catching 7. I mean, he was the guy. A lot of people really worried about Braylon Allen. I will tell you, Breece Hall was just a fantastic buy. Trade deadlines, you probably have a couple days left. I don't think it does anything for you. You can't, would not want to sell him off at this point. Even though the Jets are floundering, maybe that's something let me present a devil's argument here. Do you think that with the Jets floundering, that maybe they want to see a little bit more Braylon Allen when it's the most important fantasy time and you would want to move off of it? Or are you just very comfortable with like, hey, Breece Hall is like the dude for, the rest of the season?
No, I mean, he's being pushed out. And this is going to be a common thing because the same thing happened to Tyler Algier, where if these teams with these good running backs are losing, they don't go away from the good running back. They keep him in there. And Breece Hall had 44 snaps. Braylon had 9. So, yeah, I mean, he is getting squeezed out because they're down and they need their best players on the field constantly. And Breece Hall is the best player on offense, and it's not really even close to a question anymore. Garrett Wilson is still great. Devontae Adams is still great. And Rodgers hasn't thrown for over 250 yards in a month. So they're just not looking good right now. So Breece Hall everything needs to be filtered through him in this offense.
Rank these wide receivers in order: Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, rest of season.
I would go Wilson, Adams, Downs, Pittman.
Okay, and Pittman like pretty far down there.
Yeah, I mean, pretty far. Yeah,
okay.
Right, I still like Pittman. He still has upside, but Rich doesn't like throwing the ball to him. So
Jets next week, they've got a bye, and Detroit has got Indianapolis. So there you go for that. You can throw against Detroit if you're not the Jaguars. Let's see where that goes, because you can run against the Colts, and David Montgomery is a monster. All right, Bogman, time for you to celebrate and be super happy, so I'll be extra annoyed. Baltimore, they lost to your Pittsburgh Steelers 18-16, just like you wrote it up. Rusty couldn't get me 21 more yards, unfortunately. Really not a fantastic offensive game on your guys' side. They just held down the Baltimore Ravens so hard. Game. George Pickens had a monster game. He ended up having 12 targets, so all sides of the props ended up playing. Najee Harris got the brunt of the offense. He just fell short of 100 total yards. The Steelers held Derrick Henry to 65 yards and I believe a touchdown, which is like, that's great to hold Derrick Henry to. Zay Flowers was held down to just a couple catches, and Lamar Jackson was only 16 of 33. Your main takeaways, what do you want to take out of this Pittsburgh and Baltimore from a fantasy perspective going into next week?
Yeah, I mean, from a fantasy angle, it's not a ton. I think not a lot has changed, right? Lamar continues to struggle against the Steelers, so this is just one of those matchups where, later in the season when the Steelers are playing the Ravens, maybe you want to make a plan for that week. Go and look up matchups if you're rolling Lamar and take a look at it. At that point, who knows? A bunch of the Steelers players could be hurt, and maybe Lamar doesn't have an issue, right? But against this defense, he has been rough recently. So
what happened to Mike Williams? I felt like people were like vying for Mike Williams, and I believe he was 4th in wide receiver snaps for the Steelers this week.
Most aggravating thing of the game to me, because Calvin Austin has no size, and Russell Wilson is throwing 50-50 balls at this point in his career. So I'd like to see more Mike Williams. We'll see. They're playing on a short week. I don't know how much more we get him on Thursday night either. So we'll see. That is still a huge question. And we also saw Freiermuth and Darnell Washington split snaps at tight end. They both had 44, way more routes for Freiermuth, of course, as the receiving guy. But Washington had some big catches here, and then he could have had a touchdown if he would have just jumped off the ground a little bit, but he did not. So we stuck with 6 Boswell field goals. So, but yeah, rough game for Lamar. Yeah,
let me present these two.
Zay also, and
Zay was a little rough, but let me present the two fantasy things that seem apparent. If you've been one of the few people that's been sitting on Deontay Johnson, you can cut him. He's an easy cut. We've been saying that. This Aguilar more than doubled his snaps. Deontay, easy cut this week for literally anything, and likely came back and kind of killed Mark Andrews again. Like Mark Andrews ended up only getting 3 targets, 2 catches for 22, while Likely went 4 for 75. Do you think Likely back, this is going to be a trend that Andrews is going to go back into his slumber? He's going to go back and hibernate for the rest of the winter?
I don't think he is. I think Mark Andrews had a couple catches that were called, but there were 8 million penalties in this game. So I think he had a couple that were caught and then called back on penalties and stuff. But it was just, Lamar had a bad game, and that's pretty much what it boils down to. And I think the Ravens are going to be fine. This is going to be a blip.
Well, okay, but do you think Andrews is a top 10 tight end rest of season now? Because he has been top 10 for close to a month.
I mean, I think he's 10, but yes, I do think he's top 10 still. He's still a tight end 1 at least.
Do you think he is above Likely? Debro's in the chat. Shout out to Debro. Said Likely is a trap. It's a trap.
I don't know that he's a trap, but it is it will be more annoying than it was for sure. You're definitely right about that, Welsh. But I still think Mark Andrews will be better than Likely most weeks because he got most of that on a 42-yard catch.
Yeah, I guess what I'm more saying is Likely going to that's fine if Andrews goes 4 for 35 and Likely goes 3 for 24 and he's better. I'm worried that Likely just takes that top off of Andrews having top 10 upside.
There's not any good tight ends. So Mark Andrews continues to be a low end tight end 1. You want to start guys over him, but they're not on the wire. So unless Taysom Hill's on your wire.
I think whether it's a trap or not, I think Andrews is going to hurt in the ranks, Debro, this week with maybe not even so much that Likely needs to rank above him is that Andrews, continuously proves that he is more touchdown dependent really than anything. And this is what happens. So it does come back, circle all the way back to Bogman's point. Lamar struggling, the offense struggles. Andrews is going to have that, but also maybe to reiterate to people that if Andrews doesn't get a touchdown, it's pretty stinky. Likely still is a big playmaker, and he can do 4 for 75 and, full PPR put up 10 points. Just saying. Baltimore has got the Chargers on Monday Night Football next week. Pittsburgh at Cleveland Thursday Night Football, as you mentioned, Bogman. Minnesota and Tennessee. Minnesota beat Tennessee 23-13. Sam Darnold 246 and 2 scores. Aaron Jones a whole bunch of nothing. A little bit more of Cam Akers, which is super annoying. Jordan Addison woke up and did something. Jefferson had a solid game on the Tennessee side. Shout out to Will Levis and the 98-yard touchdown to Nick Westbrook-Akina, which would have been awesome last week when I started him in a couple spots and had a bet on him, but whatever. Same. He ended up having 2 for 117. Pollard was a big old nothing burger. If you were picking out a highlight or two from the fantasy perspective, is Pollard, I'm kind of throwing Pollard at you if you're looking at the running backs. Pollard versus Jones, are these both things we should be worried about moving forward?
I do have a little concern. Luckily, well, not luckily, but unfortunately, Tyjae Spears is in concussion protocol. That may boost Tony Pollard come next week. So we'll see. They're at Houston, so not a really good matchup either way. But yeah, Cam Akers getting more involved was super annoying. 10 carries for him, only 15 for Aaron Jones. Don't like that. He also caught a touchdown at the goal line on that little pop pass from Sam Darnold. So yeah, Cam Akers getting more involved is an issue for Aaron Jones for sure. I mean, and this may be just, hey, we're winning games. Let's keep Aaron Jones healthy. So let's take a little bit off of him. Maybe that's what we're seeing right here, but I don't like it.
Hawkinson 2 for 13 rest of season. Hawkinson or Andrews? D-Bro, if you're in the chat, answer that too.
I'm going Hawkinson there. He continues to be behind Josh Oliver. I don't think that's going to continue the rest of the way. So I think Hawkinson's going to see more the deeper into the season we get. So I'll go with Hawk.
I don't know if any of our if Mayor is in here. If you want to run a poll too, let me know. I would be interested what people say. Hawkinson versus Andrews rest of season at tight end. I lean Hawkinson on this one because of everything I said before. But that is to say that Hawkinson ended up only having 2 catches today. He had 3 total targets. We saw that uptick in Addison. I mean, Jefferson and Addison were half of the targets of Sam Darnold's throws. Literally 16 of his targets of the attempts from Darnold were to those 2 players. And then he just kind of weirdly spread the whole stuff else around. Do you think Will Levis is a deep flex option right now?
I mean, when you have a ton of bye weeks, he probably will be. But I don't know. The rushing upside is still there for Will Levis, which is nice, but he's just not a very good quarterback. So couple big plays here. Minnesota secondary can get got, and they did. So not take away that 98-yard touchdown, right? And Will Levis had 200 yards and a pick. So not that impressive.
It's about a Will Levis line if there's ever been one. Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, neither are a top 20 running back in week 12. True or false? Matchups, by the way, Minnesota at Chicago, Tennessee at Houston. So Pollard has got Houston, and Aaron Jones has the Bears.
You have a decent amount of bye weeks, right? So I'll say false because of the bye weeks. But it's not Pollard. It would be Aaron Jones.
Oh, Aaron Jones over Pollard.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. So I already told you guys what is coming up in the future weeks for you. How about win some stuff? Yes, we love to give away, and he was giving it to the Chiefs today. That is Josh Allen, my friends. You have a chance to win a signed Josh Allen Bills autographed helmet, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com. And here is all you have to do. You don't have to try to stage a comeback. You don't have to try to get DeAndre Hopkins the ball. All you have to do is go to fantasypros.com/contest. You can complete a form, and then you can do a couple different things. And here's the tip. You can do all of them. Download the Fantasy Bros Draft Wizard app. There's 1. Leave a review on the podcast. There's 2. Then you can follow us on our social medias, X, Instagram, TikTok, at Fantasy Pros. And guess what? All of those are entries for you. We'll be announcing the winner right here on the podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, just subscribe, turn on notifications, and you will be alerted when new episodes are up and when you can claim your prize. Hopefully that beautiful, gorgeous Josh Allen autographed helmet. Bills Mafia. That's pretty sweet. That is sweet. All right. The New Orleans Saints beat up on the Cleveland Browns 35-14.
Carr
had a couple
started
touchdowns.
Taysom Hill today, by the way, Welsh. Let's get some hands.
You know what? That's a good point because
awesome.
I thought you were going to say, who started Marquez Valdez-Scantling? And who said to start Marquez Valdez-Scantling? Very disgusted and gross. That's me. But yes, Marquez Valdez-Scantling overshadowed by the amazing Taysom Hill, who ended up going 7 for 138. He had 2 scores of rushing, some receiving, 3 touchdowns. He was a monster. I think he had 50 on the ground. Was it 138 in the air?
138 on the ground in 3 scores.
Absolutely. We have him in a best ball too. I have him in like a couple best balls, which is the greatest humanly possible place to own Taysom Hill is in best balls, where he can just drop up with that huge one. He was the offense. Kamara did a little bit of here and there. Only Marquez Valdez-Scantling did anything with the ultimate MVS line of all time, 2 for 87 and a score. It was all about Taysom Hill. On the Brown side, Tillman did have 8 targets, kind of disappointed. Judy also had a huge day, 6 for 142 and a score. Chubb didn't do much. Taysom Hill. This is what he is built around. But do you think with all these weapons that have been taken away from the Saints offense, we get these, we're used to these like occasional Taysom Hill things, but do you think like Taysom Hill's floor needs to be raised to a level that he is a top 6 tight end rest of season, knowing that we can get more out of him?
I think that's a pretty good line. I would say he's definitely a top 10 tight end for the rest of the season. This kind of explosion is insane. You're not going to see this anywhere. I think somebody said it was the 12th best tight end day in fantasy history.
200, like almost 200 yards. But I'm saying, like, do you think
he should get 10 to 12 touches a game? That is what should happen.
Okay.
Right. So like 5 to 7 carries a game, if not more than that. Jamal Williams was out. He's going to come back. Does that change anything in terms of running back touches? Right. Does Taysom Hill not have as many? I would assume he gets more because of this performance. The trick plays are great, and he's still involved in the passing game as well, or the receiving game, I guess I should say, with him. But yeah, I mean, he should be getting 10 touches a game, and the rushing upside really raises that floor, as you alluded to. So,
okay,
yeah, he should be a pretty good tight end start for the rest of the year.
Bowers ahead, Kittle ahead, Kelsey ahead. Who else is ahead?
Yeah,
affirmatively ahead.
I mean, affirmatively ahead. I don't know if too many guys are on a week-to-week basis, right? Maybe Cole Kmet, now that he's getting 95% of the snaps. I like to see that with a new OC in Chicago. But
over Hill right now?
Not over Hill, but I'm just saying based on matchups, right? Like you may be looking at Cole Kmet taking a big bump here pretty soon. So yeah, I'm just trying to think of like week to week which guys, but I think those are the guys that you're for sure starting over him. There's not a lot outside of that. I mean, Laporte is banged up and hasn't been good. Kincaid's banged up, right?
No,
so
garbage, Ingram, garbage,
Evan Ingram.
Andrews,
I mean,
garbage.
If Trevor Lawrence is never going to play again, you're never going to start Evan Ingram.
That's kind of that's all that I'm kind of like getting to here is that there are, because we do this a lot when we're talking to people, we'll say, okay, I like this guy if you're trying to, gain some points. I like this guy if I like a floor. I think at this point, it's hard to make the case against Taysom Hill rest of season that he isn't, because who did I say? Bowers, Kittle, Kelsey, that's it.
And McBride, you're going to start over.
Okay, McBride. Let's give you McBride. So there's 4,
Njoku,
so 5.
Maybe Kate Otten.
But see, though, all those guys, I think belong in that. I think there's a clump and of affirmative. Yeah, fine. So McBride will be the affirmative. I'll do that. But at 5, then it's in Njoku and Taysom. And if you're looking for that upside, I think that's the space that you're in. Usually, I would just laugh this off and be like, Taysom, like let's move forward. Except there's nobody else there. I mean, this offense, to be able to move and continue scoring, has to get Taysom Hill the ball because they only else have Kamara. So I think that's what creates such a great floor for Taysom Hill. Where's the application? Maybe he's been floating around there for people. If he were a waiver wire guy, he's probably got to be at the tippy top. Also, funny fact I believe he scored 41 points. That was a QB1, RB1, wide receiver 1, and a tight end 1 across the board. And you never see that. He was a number 1 at every single position.
He was a week winner. Yeah. I mean, if you started Taysom Hill, you most likely won your matchup.
Good on you. Or if he was on your bench, then you're as happy as I am this week.
It's tough. Yeah.
Is it tough?
Especially if you started Kelsey over him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to just chalk that up to the game.
Yeah, you can't regret that. But yeah, that's tough.
Anything else that you want to hit? I mean, I think the MVS stuff is as normal. Judy massively out targeted. And I just want to point out, right or wrong, whatever, like, when I was having all these debates about Cedric Tillman and Cedric Tillman ranking so high, it was like, hey guys, just want to point out that like they're distributing targets across the board. Winston is distributing targets to Judy and Eli Moore. That Tillman is not this clear-cut number 1.
Judy had an 89-yard touchdown, I think. So, most
he had 11 targets.
He did have 11 targets, but they were also getting stomped for the majority of that game. So we'll see. I mean, everybody's production is going to be less when it's Pittsburgh versus Cleveland because Pittsburgh drags you down in the mud. That's what they do. So, we'll see moving forward what Judy does. But yeah, Cedric Tillman is a big play guy. He hit his long reception. It was 21.5 and 22. So we cashed that one. We like that one. But yeah, I think the Browns offense is kind of tricky right now. Jerome Ford getting way more snaps than Nick Chubb, but Nick Chubb getting way more carries. So they're just having Jerome Ford do the dirty work, which kind of makes your offense predictable when you have Nick Chubb in there. So, it's not a lot is good right there. Winston looked pretty good, for a guy losing but he had 395 yards or whatever it was. So, yeah, decent day for him.
Shout out to me for all of the Juwan Jennings over Tillman answers I gave in the shout out. So shout out to me. One win I'll take, because
shout out to Welsh.
A lot of not other. It's a one win that I can have this weekend. Pittsburgh has got Cleveland Thursday Night Football, as we mentioned. New Orleans is on a bye, so more time for them to figure out new fun plays for Taysom Hill. Next week, he's going to also return a punt, so he can be like the number. Can we put Taysom Hill in our defensive slot and our DST if he starts returning punts?
Oh yeah. Taysom Hill over the Bills. That's what you want to do on a week-to-week basis. Yeah, that'd be great.
It's an incredible stat. It's a credible stat for a guy that qualifies at like running back, wide receiver. I don't know if there is a site that lets him qualify at all four positions.
I'm sure there is.
I know some have like wide receiver or tight end and quarterback.
Some leagues have it like you throw one pass, you qualify a QB. You know what I mean? So whatever.
Yeah. All right. Detroit absolutely mud stopped the Jaguars. 52. Did I say it correctly? Is Pizza Pia going to be happy with how I said Jacksonville?
Jaguars? No, it's we say Jaguars. He wants you to say Jaguars or however he says. I don't know how he says it.
Jaguars. Omar's coming. 52-6. Detroit absolutely just stomped it down. Montgomery had 2 touchdowns. Gibbs ended up having over 100 yards and a score. Goff 4 touchdowns. Amon-Ra, huge day, 11 for 162 and 2 scores. Jameson Williams was a late add to my betting card. He went for 124 and a score. I mean, everything was clicking on Detroit. Everything was a disaster for the Jacksonville football team. So, Boggs, here's the question. What's the new thing to take from? Is there anything to take from this? Because the only new piece of information that I walk away with here is like, they ran this route where Jameson Williams is kind of in motion and he just kind of like flanks under, and they like to throw that down the middle. And that's where he had that huge touchdown play. And what I'm getting at is 6 targets for Jameson Williams makes me feel comfortable. So there's nothing to take from the Jaguars outside. They stink. The Lions were too dominant, but I felt really good that Jameson Williams got more involved than just having to make he did make a massive, huge play, but it didn't have to just be like 2 catches. He had 6 targets. That's huge.
But this was all with no Sam Laporta. So Sam Laporta comes back. Maybe
3 targets. Yeah. 3 targets taken away.
Okay. But how many did he have? 6?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't mean from Jameson Williams, but yeah, to your point, like he's gonna take down the field stuff from Laporta. But
the middle of the field is Sam Laporta's area too, where you said he made that huge play. So J-Mo just continues to be a boomer bust player. He's in that DeAndre Hopkins MVS kind of territory. I guess less DeAndre Hopkins now, but he's kind of in that territory where you need him to have that huge play if you are going to depend on him. And I don't think too much changes off of this game based on that. I would say he's safer than those guys. So, in this offense is rolling right now. So like you said, not a lot to take away. And what we're really going to be taking away from Jacksonville is whatever happens after Doug Peterson and Balky are fired on Monday. So
yeah, that happens Monday. I was about to say 100% about to say 100%.
I mean, Schefter and Glazer and like all those reporters have intimated that this is going to happen sooner rather than later after the worst loss in franchise history, which is crazy that it beat another game against the Lions, who are in the NFC from 1995, who beat them by 42 and then 44 today. And this was a scoregami too. Never had this score in the NFL game. So very strange game.
6 has never been in the NFL.
I guess so. That's what Scott Hansen said on the Red Zone. So, but yeah, I mean, we're going to see a different Jacksonville next week with the new head coach, most likely. So we'll see what changes are made at that point.
The one thing to hope for is the positive on the Jags, because like Etienne had full run and he absolutely disappointed, was Brian Thomas ended up having 7 targets. It was a kind of a blowout, 5 for 82. You hope whatever changes they make, they continue that, because Brian Thomas was actually startable. I will say Ingram had 7 targets, but that's what they need to do. Simplification is probably coming down the pipe when they do make that. By the way, the Jags are on bye, so bye-bye, Doug Peterson. That's almost a guarantee. And you have got Detroit at Indianapolis, as we mentioned. The Green Bay Packers beat the Bears 20-19, just barely. And, I had mentioned this with the Bears, and it actually did come true. We saw more of a split in the running game. We saw Roshan. I kind of speculated this might be something that ends up happening. Swift was still awesome with that huge play, 14 for 71 and a score. Roshan had 10 carries, so something to be on the lookout for. DJ Moore and Adunze were more involved. Those are all good positives. I'm starting with the Bears here. On the Packers side, Christian Watson had that big, ginormous day. Jaden Reed was saved by a touchdown. Jordan Love did not pass a bunch, but still put up a wildly effective day. It's kind of, I look at this as quintessential Packers outside of Kraft not being involved whatsoever. And the more interesting fantasy questions probably evolve around the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, the Packers only had 46 offensive snaps today. So they played at a slow pace. They only scored 20 points. It was just a slow slog of a day for the Green Bay offense. So not a lot different there. Jacobs, decent day, obviously. Christian Watson with a huge play. But yeah, for the Bears, we did see a lot of changes. You just talked about Swift and Roshan. It was 41-30. It's only 11 more snaps for Swift. They also, in routes, it was only 5 more for Swift, 19-14. So, but most of Roshan's work was goal line work, right? And short yardage work. That's what he is there for. And they utilize him in that role, which was not happening before. And I mentioned before, Cole Kmet, 95% of the tight end snaps in this game. Outstanding. That's what we want to see from a tight end. So, didn't have an enormous day, 3 catches for 42 yards. That's fine for a tight end, but we should see an uptick a little bit, at least with him being out on the field so much.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Is there a wide receiver? And think about this, because this is going to blow your mind.
Okay.
We are going to look to trade a wide receiver, but trade for or away is on the table. Christian Watson, 4 for 150. Jaden Reed, only 2 catches. Rome Odunze, 10 targets, 6 for 65. Keenan Allen, 8 for 40, 4 for 41. But DJ Moore, 7 for 62. So you understand the game of what I'm playing here. There's a lot of different angles to this. All the Bears have almost been free 99. Jaden Reed disappointed, and Watson had that big old crazy big game. But what is really available for him? So I'll give you all 5 of those wide receivers. Give me the top 2 plays, and whatever it is, you're trading away or you're trading for.
I'm trading for DJ Moore and Jaden Reed because I think they are the cheapest that they've been in a while. I mean, not the cheapest. I think a couple weeks ago would have been cheaper for DJ Moore, but people are down on Jaden Reed because he's not getting a crazy high snap share. I don't really care. He's around the goal line all the time. He scored a touchdown in this game when they only had, very few offensive plays in this game. So it's a guessing game with these guys. And sometimes you're going to guess wrong, which is super frustrating. But for me, you're not getting back anything for these dudes. So it's not the time to trade them away. It's time to trade for them. And if I'm trading for 2 of them, it's the guys that I thought were the best going in, and I continue to think of the best. It's DJ Moore and it's Jaden Reed. I would love to say Rome Odunze, but it's just he's not getting this every single week. And maybe that will change with the new OC. We'll see. I think Odunze is the most talented out of everyone you said there. But I just don't know if it's all going to come together his rookie year or not.
San Francisco's at Green Bay, Minnesota's at Chicago, and maybe your trade deadlines are not over. There are still some trade deadlines that are going into the beginning of next week. And if that is the case, Fantasy Pros has got you covered, whether it's DJ Moore or Jaden Reed being a strong buy low, buy high, however you want to consider a candidate. What you can do is you can use the trade analyzer at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football My Playbook app, and you can get instant evaluations on how any trade will affect your team for that week, the rest of the season, or even a dynasty you can do. So go and sync up your league today. You can sync them up for free. Go and check it out. Like it says right there on there, crush your competition and sync your league for free today, and then start digging into that trade analyzer because there's probably only a couple days left to get them done, and maybe those guys would be some good targets for you. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins and Las Vegas Raiders. Miami won 34-19. I, on the trade show, offered myself as tribute for everybody for Tyreek Hill, and I think, Welshness Katniss? Could I be that? Because I came through offering myself and saying that Tyreek Hill would, I'm done and I was over it. And he ended up going 7 for 61 in a score. I believe he also rushed in a touchdown. It might not be here, but I believe he had that. Big day-ish for him. Waddle didn't do a whole lot. Achane does his usual 100 and a score. Tua had a really fantastic day as well, ranked him pretty high. Miami Dolphins, what's your take? Tyreek Hill, we were very worried about the wrist. Are you back, and are you buying Tyreek Hill? What do you think is more palatable? Buying Tyreek Hill around wide receiver, let's call it 14 or 12. Let's call it 12. Wide receiver 12, whatever that costs. Is that more palatable, or selling him around wide receiver 12? Which one would you rather do?
I'd rather sell with the wrist injury. Deepak talked about it before, that this is something that is not going to get better until you have surgery. And, he's going to try and play through it. And he's still great. He's still awesome, which is why I think you can sell him and get something decent back right now. But yeah, if I had to pick one, I am worried about that long term, and they do have other options. So, you really don't have other options than Tyreek Hill, but they have good wide receivers. Malik Washington could get the ball a little bit more. We know Jalen Waddle could use some more targets. Everybody who's rostering Jalen Waddle knows that. So they do have some decent players. This isn't like losing Devontae and going down to Jacoby Myers and a bunch of scrubs. You know what I mean? I think they would be okay. But yeah, I think if I had to pick buy or sell one, I would sell right now because he's coming off a good game.
Yeah, I think, Tua can only play the Raiders every week. It'd be great. He was able to do that while it was just essentially Hill. Well, I wasn't about to say this. I was about to say it was just Hill and Achane. But you know what? Jonnu Smith, secretly good for weeks and weeks. 6 for 101 and 2 scores. He is taking over whatever used to go to Waddle, just goes to him now. I would still take Jonnu or Taysom Hill rest of the season. I would still take Taysom, but I think Jonnu is in that range.
Yeah, I would go with Taysom as well, but Jonnu is spiking just like him. You would take Jonnu over Kyle Pitts for sure, right? Yep. You'd take him. Kincaid's hurt right now. Dallas Goedert came back banged up. LaPorta. Yeah, probably. Andrews, Evan Ingram.
Top 10.
I think, yeah, 10. you would start to question it around like Cade Otton and what he's been doing with all those wide receivers down in Tampa. And even then, Mike Evans is going to come back and take a decent amount of targets away as well. So yeah, Jonnu is looking really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, not over Brock Bowers, though. 16 targets, 13 catches, 126 yards, and a score. He was everything for this offense. And the only thing, is there any Raider takeaway that's worth focusing on?
I mean, yeah, I think, because we had a new OC, Zamir White got hurt. He left with a quad injury, but he had 21 of 29 first and second down snaps before getting hurt. So it seems like the new OC here wants to go back to giving the ball more to Zamir White. And, we've seen Alexander Mattison. He sucks. We've seen it. We know what he is. He doesn't need to be getting anything. But Amir Abdullah, he got hurt too, by the way. And so Amir Abdullah at the end of the game got a touchdown because he's the only running back left. So if this is a minor injury for Zamir, he's going to be good for next week. I mean, in a week where there weren't a bunch of injuries, there's not a lot on the wire. Maybe $1 or $2 on Zamir is not bad.
I'm so proud of what I'm about to say. Alex under Madison. Alex, and I wish I was on a betting pro show right now. Everyone would have loved that. Erickson would have loved that. I'd have got a big pop, but I didn't there. Where were we on the Alex under? Denver at the Raiders. New England is at Miami next week. All right.
Real quick. Also, Jalen Wright getting more involved over Raheem Mostert. So I know Mostert got a little dinged and then came back. Maybe that was it, but it's really muddy behind Achane right now.
Rams, they beat New England 28-22. Stafford, big day, 4 touchdowns, almost 300 yards, essentially 300. Puka, 7 for 123 and a score. Cup went over 100 with 2 touchdowns. Big day for both of the big prime wide receivers, as you would have expected. Drake May, 282 and 2 touchdowns. Ramondre had a decent day. Bourne had a score. Pop Douglas ended up getting 7 targets, a little bit there for the booty man, and Hunter Henry 6 for 63. Fantasy takeaway. Is there something of relevance for us to take out of this game? Because I think a lot of what we expected happened. Puka, Cup 8. Kyren didn't have the big day, but there's a lot of expectations out of this one.
Well, the only thing from the Rams is, I know Parkinson scored the touchdown, but Davis Allen had 34 snaps to his 19. He had 17 routes to Parkinson's 5. So, if you're looking to add someone, don't think, oh, Colby Parkinson, maybe you're in a tight end premium. We play in a dual tight end league, or you're in a deep league. Parkinson is nothing right now. So, wholly dependent on a touchdown. That's the only thing, because we saw Kyron, Puka, and Kupp, which is exactly what you expect. On the Patriots side, not a lot here either. I mean, it was Stevenson with the 20 touches, and then Gibson, or 24 touches, and then Gibson and Hasty doing pretty much nothing. Bourne was in the doghouse last week and didn't play, and all of a sudden this week, back to 5 targets and 70 yards and a touchdown. So they released Tyquan Thornton. I guess maybe that was part of the deal there, but Bourne back in the rotation. That's really it from New England as well. There's just not a lot to take away here.
One interesting thing, though, the booty man, Boutte, led in snaps, wide receiver. So
that's 3 or 4 weeks in a row. He is led. But with Kendrick Bourne back in there, I think he kind of muddies all of them. Polk had more snaps today, too. But
it's probably more of a betting angle. It's more of a betting angle than anything else. Sure. Philly at the Rams Sunday Night Football next week, and we've got New England at Miami. Tomorrow, or today, as you guys are listening to this, you can check out Bogman, myself, and Joe Pizzapia and the Rant Line. That's right, because every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Fantasy Pros Discord, you can check out Out of Bounds, where we are taking questions from all of our listeners. People are ranting and raving about the complaint line, what happened during the week, fantasy questions for the coming week. We're talking about all the crazy stuff that happened over the weekend. We'll probably be talking about Peterson getting fired and everything else under the sun. We've got our 3-1-1 contest. We've got the touchdown contest. It's a ton of fun, and we do a lot of that stuff on our Discord. Check it out today, fantasypros.com/chat. That'll take you to our Discord. It's free to sign up. You can check out all the podcasts that we do. Also, Erickson and myself, Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern for the Extra Point. We are literally just full hour answering all of your questions. And I got some specialty ones like Fitz and Boggs, 5 p.m. Eastern on the third Tuesday of each month.
This Tuesday.
This Tuesday. Perfect. There you go. So go and sign up today, fantasypros.com/chat. You can get in on some of the cool stuff for free. Join our community. And if you want, you can even take a step up and get in on premium on the Fantasy Pros Discord. I highly suggest you do so.
I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of people calling that played against Taysom Hill on the show tomorrow. So we'll see.
Yeah. Oh, can you imagine? I guess I was thinking about all the big performances of like this week. It would have just been like Barkley and Taysom, but I was thinking of last week where it was like Chase. There's just those ones that's at least this one. It just ruined your Sunday. It didn't like ruin your entire weekend happening on Thursday. All right. The afternoon slate. We've got Denver beat up on Atlanta 38-6. Bo Nix 307 with 4 touchdowns. Javonte Williams 9 for 59 and a score. And you know what? I had a decent prop day. My biggest, most vocal things didn't necessarily work out, but boy, was I on the under of Audric Estime. I was on the big old slam the under, and it happened. He had 6 carries for 16, and I believe he ended the half with 1 carry for 0 yards. So this was in just absolute game overtime where Estime got involved. So I know that ruined a lot of people, but we can't fall for that type of stuff. Not that Javonte was great. They kind of spread it around because they didn't get to do the whole thing. Sutton, 7 for 78. He ended up having a solid day. And then on Atlanta's side, everyone was really kind of shut out. London had a black game. Mooney ended up getting banged up, as we talked about at the top of the show. And Bijan had a absolutely just disappointing, heartbreaking week 11 performance against the Denver Broncos. So what do you want to hit here?
D is legit, man. That defense is legit. They've been really good recently, and this is just proving that point again. And this is kind of, I talked about this with Seth on this show. I talked about it with you and Joe and ITL about Javonte and Audric Estime, right? It was my thought process was you're trying to wear out this Chiefs front. That's why you run the big guy in there and Estime. That's exactly, it seems like what it was, or it was some, let's get Javonte fired up by giving his job to somebody else, something. Didn't really seem to work in terms of the yardage here, but in snaps, it was 32-14 in favor of Javonte over Audric Estime. So not even close, more than double his snaps. And
so we're not going to do the Estime thing next week. No,
we're not
going to fall for it. Denver has got the Raiders So no. Okay, good.
I mean, look, Estime could get in there if they're killing the Raiders like they were killing the Falcons, right? And he had some decent runs for sure late in that game against Atlanta here today, but it was late. Yeah, the game was in hand. It was decided. Javonte is back to being the guy there. Now, look, what does that mean for a Denver offense that, has been okay? I don't think we're going to see 4 touchdowns again from Bo Nix anytime soon. So we'll see. Bo Nix has been solid, but Sutton got involved here. Not a lot to take away from the Falcons, except for, we talked about the Darnell Mooney injury. So Ray probably getting the boost. I mean, Kyle Pitts just continues to be a disappointment. You couldn't, I would rather have Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely over Kyle Pitts. It seems like for the rest of the year, this guy's been miserable. Bijan, all of the touches here, we didn't see anything I think Tyler Algier had 4 snaps. So I don't know if he got banged up at some point or something, but when the game was decided, they put in Penix, they put in Jace McClellan. So we just saw nothing from Tyler Algier today. So that's the way it's been going in Atlanta when they're losing. It's the way it's been going in New York for the Jets with Breece Hall over Braylon Allen as well. These guys that are talented backs are not seeing the field at all because these teams are down. And that's what we saw today in both those instances.
And we won't see any Atlanta Falcons next week. They're on a bye. Denver is up at the Raiders for next
big week. Audric Estime game coming in inbound since we talked smack about
I will say this. This was my big point to Estime. They said going into this week is they played hot hand, but here's what they do. They start the games with Javonte. So next week they'll start it with Javonte. If he doesn't get going and Estime starts it, then he'll roll through there. So for his prop to be 57 yards was laughable this week. And it will be laughable at any amount of trust that you have next week because you just don't know. Like the Raiders stink. We do know that. So there's a possibility, but you should probably bank on, if you had to bank on them, Williams over Estime at this point. Not to say that Estime is not good. Sure. You'd love to see him. He caught a couple passes in that game. You'd love to see him get more involved, but they've got to commit to it, and they're not. All right. The worst game of the week broke my heart coming into this. The 49ers, as what I say earlier, the Jets' favorite thing to do is disappoint. The 49ers' favorite thing to do is not close a game. They cannot close a game if their life depended on it and their season depends on it, and they don't. They lost 20-17 to the Seattle Seahawks at home. The Seahawks, I believe, Geno Smith had never beaten the 49ers in his entire career, and they just did. Geno, 221, not a great day. JSN, 10 for 110. I said that on the Start and Sit show. Look out for JSN. He's going to eat up the Niners. He had 11 targets. Metcalf had a good day, 7 for 70. Lockett didn't do much. Ken Walker did end up having a touchdown, but not a whole bunch of other production. Purdy, 22 for 29. Pick wasn't his fault, but still a pick. Touchdown. Jennings, 10 for 91 and a score. He was literally everything here. CMC did go over 100. Debo was shut out. That was my big play for the week. Debo, this is the worst performance Debo has ever had against the Seahawks. You want to know why? Because I talked about his entire career versus the Seahawks. He had only gone under 50 once. Worst game of his entire career against the Seahawks, of course. But Juwan Jennings, though, huge big play here. So you tell me, I look at this and I say Juwan Jennings is the biggest piece of fantasy conversation here. But because I think everything else is pretty just straightforward.
Right.
And if that is what you want to talk about, I still am going to continue to hold this here. I don't think Juwan Jennings gets the respect from people. And I gently say this because we are all victims of this, where, maybe there are teams and players we put more hyper focus on and some less. And then you make these calculated conversations around players not knowing. I think a lot of people speak about Juwan Jennings without actually watching him play full games, because when you watch him, he's the most dominant wide receiver, like on the field, usually across both when he is heavily involved. And I just, not having him as a top 2 wide receiver with how Purdy likes him, I don't get it.
This is definitely not the case of, Juwan Jennings is in there because Ayuk got hurt and Kittle didn't play in this game and Debo stunk, right? That's why that's not the case. Juwan Jennings, we saw it in the Super Bowl last year. Like, this guy has progressively gotten better every year of his career. And this is the best year because it's the next one, right? And I'd expect next year to maybe even be better than this. We'll see. But Jennings has looked outstanding. He is right now the number 1 target on this team because Debo just is not doing it and Kittle is banged up. So it's nice that you get to play off of Christian McCaffrey. That's great for everybody now that he's back. And by the way, 2 more carries for Jordan Mason. So they continue to not split anything. Chris McCaffrey is going to wind up with another 400 touches this year after coming back in week 11 or whatever. But yeah, Jennings has been outstanding. And yeah, he deserves respect. If I don't know that I see the disrespect as much as you do, but they're definitely not mentioning him where he should be. And that is like a low end wide receiver too, with more upside than that in a lot of weeks. So this week, was outstanding. Didn't have to face Witherspoon, I think, that much. So that's great. He was outstanding against Seattle, and he's becoming one of Brock Purdy's favorite guys. So this is not a case of, well, he's only in there because this, that, and the other thing. He's in there because he's good. They love Ricky Pearsall. We've seen Ricky Pearsall make big plays, and he's playing well ahead of that guy. So yeah, we're still all for Juwan Jennings.
Yeah, I don't really care about like respect or anything. It's just I don't think a single week been ranked as a top 2 wide receiver, and he performs that way. And I just think people need to relook at that. And then you look at the questions, people were like, it was like Tillman or Juwan Jennings. And it's just like Juwan. And here's the application. Because a lot of that is our rank, our little rank contests and stuff we do. But for application to fantasy people, you should start Juwan Jennings. And Juwan Jennings should move a tier above the questions that you guys keep asking that you're putting Juwan Jennings against. He is in that 15 to 24 tier where he should be every single week.
Right now, on the rest of the season rankings, which obviously have not updated for what just happened, but he was wide receiver 34, right? Yeah, so, we're looking at wide receiver 24 is Devontae, wide receiver 25, Mike Evans, but he's in this Josh Downs, Darnell Mooney was up there, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, DeAndre Hopkins, all of those guys are ahead of him. Jaden Reed is ahead of him. Zay Flowers is ahead of him. But I think he deserves to be in at least the conversation with those guys for sure.
Yeah. And again, that's our rank thing, but you guys should try to start him. That's really what I'm trying to hit forward here. I could do that question of here are these 4 wide receivers, rank them: Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, Juwan Jennings, and JSN. And I'm going to imagine you're going to say Deebo, DK, Juwan Jennings, and JSN in that order. But I think there's a legitimate conversation that Jennings, I might put DK at the top, and then I might put Jennings at 2, and then Deebo at 3, and JSN at 4.
Yeah, I would put Deebo at the bottom of that. Deebo has been a pile of trash this year. So I would put DK at 1, probably JSN 2, Jennings 2, 3, however you want to switch them. And I think I'd put Deebo at the bottom of it.
It's bad. Arizona's got Seattle, and San Francisco has got Green Bay. Final game up. Kansas City, they finally could not overcome them being a dog. I think it was like 12-1 or something like that. 12-1 against the spread, or 12-0. Maybe it was Patrick Mahomes as a dog with the Chiefs. And they lost to Buffalo 21-30. Josh Allen, 262 with a score. He also had 55 on the ground with a rushing touchdown. James Cook didn't have volume, but he had 2 scores. Khalil Shakir, 8 for 70 on 12 targets. Amari Cooper, again, not really heavily involved. And then on the Chiefs side, of course, I'm like, ooh, what are we talking about? Starting Xavier Worthy. And then he does something, gets involved. 4 for 61 in the score. Hopkins wasn't involved. We didn't see Kelsey. This was the Noah Gray show. Very, very weird Chiefs performance. And the Bills really, I felt like just didn't need to press, didn't have to do a whole bunch to kind of take this game.
Yeah, this is, the Chiefs injuries and, being bailed out at the last minute and getting a lot of calls kind of all came up to bite them in this game. So, I don't know how much fantasy wise there's to take away here, right? Like, James Cook is getting kind of, I wouldn't say phased out, but he's just getting less each week. The 2 scores bailed him out, as you kind of mentioned earlier in the show. We saw Juju come back. He was 4th in snaps. Worthy was number 1. And I guess the one thing that you might want to look at here is Worthy getting involved in the first quarter, them designing plays. There was a play that he ran at Texas. I saw a bunch of Texas people on Twitter talking about how they stole this play from Steve Sarkisian. Well, who cares? It's a play that works. I don't care where it came from. So it was a play that worked, and he scored on it. So Kareem Hunt still way ahead of everybody. In terms of the Bills, the running back snaps look like James Cook at 27. He ran 17 routes, 15 for Ray Davis. And actually, I didn't even notice this. Ty Johnson had more snaps than James Cook, 33 and 16 routes. So they were just in shotgun a lot and running a lot of routes for those guys. And Josh Allen looked like an MVP today. He really looked good.
Yep.
So, not a ton to take away. Two of the best teams in the NFL played in a tough game.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add on the Worthy thing, I think there were a couple players that have been like this, and I've been pretty staunch about this. This is me at least, is that they're prove it guys. And like when Xavier Worthy comes into questions, like, hey, should I start? Why? Like he's got to prove. Like I would have loved to have had that day out there, but he's been nothing. So prove it. Josh Downs, should I start him or should I cut him? A lot of people wanted to cut him. Let's wait. Let's see what happens with whatever this version. There are sometimes these players that are like prove it guys. And then the same thing with the Bears wide receivers before you went and got rid of a Dunze or sold DJ Moore for absolutely nothing. Let's wait and see if there's something applicable. There were coaching changes on both the Colts and the Bears. We had not seen Worthy do anything. Now he's getting more involved. Maybe this is something rest of season. They're going to get him more involved, but it was also at the expense of Hopkins and Kelsey being absolutely nothing. There's probably a correlation when Hopkins and Kelsey, who are the 1 and 2 on this team, are nothing. Worthy 8. Is that going to happen every week? I don't think so, but maybe Worthy is now more in the conversation of like a flex.
Yeah,
option.
Kelsey had a really bad game. I guess we probably should have mentioned that. Not a very good game, but Noah Gray scored 2 touchdowns. Like that could easily be flipped and go to Kelsey. So, it's just the way it happened today. Not
Taylor's
great.
going to be mad. Taylor's going to be upset. So poor Kelsey. Get it going, buddy. All right, there you go. That is week 11 in a nutshell, at least as far as we can tell it to you guys. We got Sunday Night Football action going on as we speak. Monday night should be great. And we move on to week 12. Big things are happening. You only got a couple more weeks. You got your trade deadline here, either ended or about to end. We've got some show changes on Fantasypros as well. As the trade deadline ends, we move into kind of a prediction show that myself, Worm, and Andrew Erickson do. And, we got playoffs right around the corner. And hopefully we are getting you guys there. All the stuff to check out. My playbook has got you covered with the waiver assistant, the trade analyzer. Go and sync your leagues today. Why not? Get it set. Plus, we got a bunch of other amazing tools. We've talked about the autopilot where you can set it and forget it, optimize your lineups each week. This incredible Are They Playing tool, which is this AI model that has got it's got years of data points of injuries, and it tells you the percentages on chances to play. There's just so much in there. Go and check it out today. My playbook. Go and sync it up and get access to all the awesome tools. Do it today. Plus, you guys also got a chance to win. Josh Allen was an MVP. It can be an MVP in your cave, your man or woman cave, whatever you got going on, your sports cave. Josh Allen autograph helmet, courtesy of our friends over at Pristine Auction. So just make sure you're subscribed, make comments, do it up. That is it. We got a big old week of shows, so make sure you're locked in on the podcast side and on the YouTube. Find Scott Bogman on Twitter, Bogman Sports. You can find me at Is It the Welsh. Friends, have a fantastic evening. Let's do it all again next week, right here on Fantasy Pros. Peace out. Goodbye. We must end the stream. Good. See ya.